Hey there, well met travelers. Thanks for stopping by my channel. I really appreciate it. I want to open this video by issuing a congratulations to all of the folks you're seeing on screen right now. Their guy just won the US presidential election. Good for you. Take a victory lap. You deserve it. Truly. I suppose it's only natural. It's part of human nature to gloat a little bit about your victory, so I'll give you some grace about that for a week or so. But keep in mind that the margin by which your guy won wasn't that big. So at some point, the cringe gloating that we're hearing from all you folks is going to have to die down. I don't think it will, but by all rights, it should. And I do want to point out that since you guys won this election, that means you are now the mainstream. See, these folks you see on screen right now have been running with a narrative for the last 5 to 10 years or so, that their point of view is the one that's being suppressed by mainstream woke media. That was never actually true. They've never actually been the underdog. They have always been the voice of the status quo and of regressive tradition, but they were able to sell themselves as the underdog. But they're not the underdog anymore. One of the consequences we're going to see of Trump's victory going forward is that the mainstream media is going to, at least for a little while, be more conservative than it has arguably been for the past 4 years. It's never actually been terribly liberal, despite what these people on screen seem to think. But we're going to see a lot more capitulation to the right, at least in the short term, which means that these folks are now the mainstream of fandom commentary culture on YouTube. And I would like to encourage everyone watching this video to treat them like that. Don't let them get away with the narrative that they are the underdog, that their point of view is being suppressed or being censored on social media. They just won the election. They are the voice of the establishment now. So just put a pin in that. Now, I've never been shy in my content about my political beliefs. I've not gone out of my way to center my politics, but I've also never gone out of my way to hide them. And I think anybody who watches even one of my videos would know where I stand on the important political and cultural issues in America today, at least in broad strokes. And I neither apologize for that nor brag about it. It just is what it is. Everyone's opinions on art and pop culture are inevitably influenced by their politics. There's no way around it. So unlike the folks you see on screen right now, I don't try to hide it. I don't pretend that I'm apolitical or anything like that. But I want to segue for a moment into an aspect of my political identity that I don't really talk about publicly very much. And again, you'll see this reflected in the content that I make, though I don't go out of my way to advertise it either. One of the things that sets me apart from the rest of the online left, as far as I can tell anyway, is that I have never had a fundamentally negative view of religion or religious belief. Throughout my life, I have been at every point on the spectrum of the theism question. And when I relaunched this channel, I made a conscious decision that I would never discuss whatever my current religious beliefs or lack thereof may be in a public forum, because I don't really think it's conducive to building coalitions with a diverse group of people for a common goal. You know, if I'm in atheist bro mode 1 year and I start trying to own the theists, I'm going to alienate a lot of decent, progressive, religious people who might otherwise be part of my coalition. And likewise, if I was a theo bro and I decided that I had to debate Christian apologetics or paganism or something like that with atheists, I would again be alienating a large group of people who really ought to be part of a coalition of common interests. However, I have a lot of respect for the role that my early religious beliefs, the beliefs I held when I was in high school and going into my college career for the first time, the role that played in shaping my political identity and my moral compass. And wherever I may have been on the spectrum of belief at any given time, I never lost faith in the moral vision that experience gave me. I didn't experience religious trauma growing up, and it took me a long time moving through the circles of the online left to realize how widespread that experience is for people in marginalized communities. In many ways, I'm a child of privilege, so my bedrock understanding of religion was basically positive for a long time. And one of the reasons for that is because the role my religious beliefs played in shaping my politics. I got into what is known as liberation theology very early on in my own political and religious evolution. And I was attracted to that because of my, at the time, religious faith. I took the teachings of Jesus very seriously. I took the justice narratives of the Old Testament very seriously, and I wanted to enact that into my daily life and practice. And so that inevitably dragged me to the political left. Now, like I said, I've moved on in many ways from the theism of my high school and early college years, and I've gone back and forth on the theism question many times. I have no doubt I will continue doing so. I will probably go to my grave not knowing for sure. I'm always seeking, always questioning, always exploring. Now, why do I mention this? It is relevant here. I mention it because one of the consequences of Donald Trump's victory in the recent US election is that what we now call Christian nationalism is going to be making a big push to take over pop culture. And the folks you see on screen right now are a big part of that push, and they have been since the beginning. Now, I don't know if everyone on the screen right now identifies in their private life as a Christian, but some of them are very open about it. Others keep it on the down low, or maybe they're not believers at all, but otherwise their cultural talking points are totally simpatico with Christian nationalism. And I think that those among them who aren't religious believers, they may not be aware of the origin of their talking points and just how in line they are with a religion they might otherwise think is goofy. And that connection between Christian nationalism and anti-fandom talking points is a feedback loop. It ties into the deep dishonesty we see among both factions there. Both factions, anti-fandom and Christian nationalists, fundamentally misunderstand the source material they base their politics and cultural commentary on. And a really great illustration of that came across my social media feed recently, and I want to share it with you. This is a meme that's been going around Facebook and probably other social media platforms along the way, but I saw it on Facebook. And it's a meme that is trying to say something about the role that God supposedly played in Donald Trump's political victory. This meme is being shared on Facebook by a ton of MAGA people. The meme says, quote, "To think that God ordained a filthy-minded, adulterous, wealthy man with evil in his heart to preside over a nation challenges my self-righteous understanding. But he did, and that sinful man by grace gave us the Psalms. Hashtag King David." Now, the conceit here, the point being made, is that just as God anointed King David, a sinful man, to be king, so too has he anointed Donald Trump, a sinful man, to be president. And to question God's decision there is to be self-righteous and to misunderstand what's going on. To be presumptuous, in other words. That's why the meme says it challenges my self-righteous understanding. But anyone who's actually read the Bible, or at least understands the Bible, knows that this is backwards. God, in the Old Testament, did not anoint the kings of Israel. That was done by the people of Israel over God's objections and breaking God's heart. God in the Old Testament considered kingship a rejection of God's own authority, basically a form of idolatry. God warned the people that kings would always oppress and exploit them, that kings would tax them into poverty, that kings would draft them into unjust wars. But the people demanded kings anyway because they wanted to be more like the nations that surrounded them. And so God assented to their demands and allowed them to anoint kings. God did not anoint the kings. What God did in response to the anointing of kings was to send prophets, to hold the kings accountable, to speak truth to power, to demand social justice, to call the kings to repentance. Against King David, God sent the prophet Nathan to play that role. And it's worth mentioning as well that this meme comparing Donald Trump to King David is kind of an insult to King David, who was a repentant man, and Donald Trump is not, and shows no signs of ever being so. But be that as it may, the point here is that this meme gets the moral lesson of the prophetic books of the Bible backwards. Those who rise to power claiming the mantle of God's authority are false idols. And those who bear witness to those leaders' sins and call them to account are the moral prophets of God's authority. You can start reading all of this in 1 Samuel chapter 8 and work your way forward from there. It's a very old story, and it's widely understood that this is the point of the story. So if we're being true to the source material and true to what the authors of these stories were trying to tell us, if Donald Trump in this analogy is King David, then he's on the wrong side. He has been anointed to power by the people over the objections of God and breaking God's heart. And those who protest are God's prophets. Those who protest Trump and hold him to account, the BLM protesters, the Antifa, whoever else you want to call them, that's the voice of God's justice. If we're taking this biblical narrative seriously. I'm not saying you have to. I'm not advocating that you should believe this, but if we're going to take that story seriously, we need to be clear what it's actually saying. And Christian nationalists are either lying about this, or they don't understand their own tradition well enough to realize when their leaders are lying to them about this. And so it is with the anti-fandom people. You will see them talking about Lord of the Rings, about Star Wars, about Marvel Comics, and so forth, and they will just lie about the source material, or they will repeat lies they aren't smart enough to realize are lies. So just keep that in mind going forward. I'm not going to be as explicitly political as in the rest of my content going forward as I am in this video, at least not in the short term, but I didn't want to let this moment pass without saying something, because I think the election we just had is going to be monumental and spark a lot of changes in American society that even those who voted for Trump may not be expecting. There will be good changes and there will be bad changes. I think in the short term, most of the changes are going to be bad, really, really bad. And the people you see on screen right now are going to be gloating about it the whole time. It's going to be super cringe, and they're going to be carrying water for Christian nationalism, even if they don't realize it or don't intend it. So just keep your eye on them. Keep in mind that that's what's going on. And thanks for listening to my rant. If you like the content you see on this channel, be sure to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment down below, do all the usual diddly-do things, and until next time, remember that what's best in life is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and engage in discourse with the women.